Hey there everybody, this is Lee with Creative2xmom, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you what we read in the month of July. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Lee and this is Creative2xmom. This channel is all about homeschooling, parenthood, and thriving in the day-to-day. Or in the case of today's video, really good books. It's the end of the month, and that means today I'm going to be sharing with you all the books that I read personally, as well as the books that we read with the kids this month. This video is part of a collaboration along with April at The Simple Rugged Path and Lindsay at Bytes of Memory. I'm going to link both of their channels down below. So let's get started. So at the end of June, we spent about 4 days camping, and while my husband and my kids were fishing, I picked up this book. It's called Better Together by Pam Barnhill. This one's been out for a little while, but I have just not had a chance to read it until recently. And in this book, she talks about pulling together a morning time in your homeschool. Why that's important, some of the resources to use, her vision for having a morning time in her homeschool, and how you can start to craft that time together. Now you guys know I am a big proponent of morning time. You see my videos on this channel quite a bit, and so I was already sold on the philosophy, but I wanted to look into it a little bit deeper by somebody who is kind of known as an expert in this field. This is one of those books that I'm so glad I picked up for the summer, because I came away from it completely rejuvenated, re-inspired, excited about the new school year, and with a few ideas that I want to include in our morning basket as well. So those will be coming up really soon. It was a super quick read. Like I said, I read it while they were fishing in bits and pieces over about 3 days, and I'm so glad I picked up this one. Well worth it. Nothing super revolutionary in it, but lots of great ideas, lots of great resources, things that I didn't know about that I'm excited to include, and very, very inspiring and getting me ready for the new school year. The next book I read was called You Can Trust God to Write Your Story. This is by Nancy DeMoss Mogilwith, as well as her husband Robert Mogilwith. This video was a book that I had as part of a review from the publisher, so I will link my full review down below. I don't know really what I expected from this book. This has been a first exposure to both of these authors. I've heard good things about Nancy's work before, but I've never read any of her books. This was one of those books that was unexpected for me. She goes through each chapter, talks about something that you might face, some sort of trial or hardship or boundary to overcome. So it might be, you know, you aren't getting married until later in life. You can't have kids. You lose a loved one. You lose a child. A financial downturn in the economy. And each chapter addresses one of those areas in which you might struggle to trust the Lord, and how can you trust Him to write your story. So these chapters were filled with testimony, beautiful, beautiful testimonies of people that they know who have faced these situations and how they worked through them, with bravery and grace, and how they worked through them with a lot of integrity. I came away from this book really, really encouraged, not so much by the author, but by all these people. It's like that feeling of being in a crowd of people all working toward one goal, and knowing that you're inspiring each other and you're encouraging each other. So I would say, if you feel like you are working through a hard time in your life, or you feel like you're facing one of these situations where you just want to say, what was God thinking? This is that book that will inspire you and encourage you to keep going, and to know that He sees the bigger picture that we don't always see. I was really surprised by this book and really loved it. The next book I read is called Teaching from Rest. It's by Sarah McKenzie. You guys know that I love the Read Aloud Revival. That book was amazing. We love reading aloud in our family, and I felt so encouraged and so inspired by that one. But you also know I have not exactly loved this book. I wanted to give it a second chance though, so I put it on my summer reading list. I'm going to link that video down below as well, in case you're interested in seeing what else is on my summer reading list. But Teaching from Rest was part of that list. I wanted to give it a second chance before I took it off my shelf and passed it on. And I have to say, I am really glad I did. The first time I read through this, I think that I was viewing it in terms of more of a how-to, how to get yourself together so that things flow seamlessly. You guys know I'm very type A, and I think I was looking for a system. Reading this book the second time, I came into it much more open-minded because I wasn't expecting anything spectacular. In fact, I was kind of expecting to not like it. And so, because I didn't have these high expectations of what this book was going to look like, my guard was actually down a little bit, and I started to see her heart behind this and the mindset behind Teaching from Rest. That Teaching from Rest is not necessarily a system or a curriculum or a particular way of doing things, but the teaching from rest is taking that weight off our shoulders, of course being prepared and knowing what we're doing, not just rolling into a homeschool day, having your lessons planned, but also taking that weight off of our shoulders and putting it on the Lord and knowing that He loves and cares for our kids in ways that we can't even understand, and knowing that as long as we are following Him and doing our due diligence to be prepared for the day, that He is working in the hearts of our kids, He is working in the heart of our home, that He is working in the heart of our homeschool, and that the end results have so much less to do with us and so much more to do with Him and the people that we are teaching. So it's not my favorite. I would still say if you're on a limited income, go with Better Together. But I'm glad I took a second look at it. Now I'm not totally sure what I want to do with it. If I want to keep it on the shelf for a little bit longer or pass it on, but I have to say it was much better the second time around. The last book I read was called Remember Tuesday Morning by Karen Kingsbury. And after all of this hard thinking material, I was ready for some fiction. And this is book 3 in the 9/11 series. I have talked about the 2 prior books before this one, and I've told you guys before that book number 1 completely wrecked me. I didn't think I was going to be emotionally capable of continuing on with the series, but I'm so glad that I pushed through. This was the 3rd and final installment in this series, and this book kind of takes a different twist. The first 2 center a lot around a firefighter widow from 9/11. Her husband was killed in the events that occurred that day. This 3rd book, she and her husband, her new husband, are still a part of the story, but the story centers around a young man named Alex, whose father was killed in the events of that day. They're on the West Coast now, and he is a police officer. He has completely sold out his life to his job because he never wants the evil that occurred on that day and the things that he lost. He doesn't want that to happen to somebody else. So his sole life's purpose has become to stop evil before it can even start. And it has consumed him to the point that he has stopped being able to have normal relationships with people because he's so on guard. The only person that he has allowed to even get close is his partner, his canine. And it's about a particular fire season, which, again, very emotional, hits very close to home with what we've dealt with in the last year. But it centers around this fire season and some intelligence and some information that he gets about what is going to happen, some people who are setting fires, and how he has determined and taken it on himself that he is going to stop this from happening. He's going to stop anybody from facing the tragedy that he has faced in his life. And of course, it's also about just pulling him out of being so consumed by this and helping him to, again, take that burden off himself and put it on the Lord. Very, very good book. Sad to see the series go, but I must say this last book took kind of a different turn. It wasn't nearly as heavy. It wasn't nearly as emotional as the first 2. Definitely still compelling. Definitely still had a great story, but it didn't have that same weightiness as the first two. So if you're interested in the series but you don't think you can handle the storyline of 9/11, I would check out book number 3. That is Remember Tuesday Morning by Karen Kingsbury. We also read 3 books in the month of July with the kids. 2 were audiobooks and 1 was a read aloud. The first book was a book called Whittington. We listened to this one in the car, and the basic story is that there is this barn cat and he is trying to help this little boy learn how to read. This little boy, I don't know that they actually name it, but it sounds like he has dyslexia in the story. And so his older sister takes him to the barn where all the animals can talk, and they have a reading lesson every day. She's trying to help him catch up because they want to hold him back in school. And if he does his due diligence, works really hard on his lesson, then this cat Whittington tells the story. And it's this big epic story of this cat who was rescued by a little boy, and then he was given to a king and he lived in the palace, and this whole thing. So you switch back and forth between the barn and the animals with the little boy and then the story of this cat. I really liked the idea behind it. I like that this story addresses the struggle to learn. I like that it addresses that you can learn, you can overcome hard things. That was something that I wanted my kids to get out of this story, was this little boy's struggle, and even the cat recognized it and encouraged him. So that part of it I really liked. The epic overall story in the background was a little odd. There were moments where it was super funny and then moments where you struggled to follow the story. And the switching back and forth was a little bit sketchy. But overall, we really liked it. The kids enjoyed it, and they were a little bit sad to see it go. So the second book we read with the kids was called Grace, Gold, and Glory by Gabrielle Douglas. You guys probably know this story. She was a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in the 2012 London Games, and this is her autobiography. It tells the story of how she started out in life. Her parents were very, very poor. They didn't have much. They actually lived in a van, and how her mother sacrificed everything for these kids to the point where she worked herself into a position that she was on the Olympic gold team in London. This is actually a book that I read in the past, and I remembered kind of liking it. It was a book I wanted the kids to hear so they could see that not everything comes easily. There is hard work, and at the end of hard work is good reward, as in the case of this gold medalist. But I have to say, hearing it, I was not at all impressed. For one thing, I was reminded that it is very much so written from a young age. She wrote this book right after she competed in the Olympics, and so she was very, very young, and you can hear that. And then also the narrator in this story I did not like. She was super sassy. She had a lot of attitude. It was like one of those things that you could hear the sentence and know that, yeah, it was a little bit immature, but then the way that it was read was so sassy and so attitude-ish that I just, it kind of grated on my nerves, and I had to keep turning it off and telling the kids, okay, this is great that she's working hard, but she's still a kid. She still has a lot of growing up to do. So, I don't know, it's one of those that you might want to read with your children to kind of give them that overall picture of hard work, good reward, but I would definitely have a lot of conversation with it. And then the last book that we read with the kids was called The Shakespeare Spy by Gary Blackwell. This is the 3rd book in the Shakespeare series. They just finished it up. I don't have a whole lot to say about this book because it's one that they read with my husband, other than to say that they really enjoyed the series so much so that they wanted to read all 3, and they were all satisfied with the ending. So in my book, that is a win. We picked up this series when we were studying Shakespeare in the spring, and even though this is a fictionalized account, we felt like it was well worth it to give some background information about the time, the language, sort of a fictionalized event of what may have occurred during Shakespeare's time. So that's all the books that I read in the month of July, as well as the books that we read with the kids. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you are loving reading, or any of these books that sound good to you that you would like to pick up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, don't forget to check out the description box below for a few video links, blog posts, and of course links to April and Lindsay's channels. So I hope you will check out their videos as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.